I had spent the better part of my youth as a guitar player, I'm talking well over a decade, trying to learn how to solo in a way that I could only describe now as wrong. And I have no problem admitting that to you because it actually led me to a massive breakthrough that gave me a huge quantum leap forward in my guitar playing. And that is exactly what I'm going to be sharing with you today. Just be sure to stick around till the very end of the video because I've got a free gift for you and your guitar. You're both going to love it. Okay, now when I say I was practicing how to solo the wrong way, what I really mean is just missing the bigger picture. Okay, so picture 16-year-old me, right? I was really into, at the time, you know, the, like, take your pick from the guitar virtuoso pantheon. I was really into guys like Paul Gilbert, Vinnie Moore, heck, even Malmsteen, you know, all these shredders, you know, which, not my favorite word to describe them because I feel like they were way more than that. They actually are great musicians, but it was their technique that really dazzled me. You know, as a kid, I was like, I want to play fast. I want to play fast. You know, it's just like, you know, when you first discover a race car as a kid and you're just like, I want to drive fast, right? It's kind of the same thing, but with guitar. And so I had put my head down and I had just like rhino charged forward in this whole philosophy of like building technique, learning scale patterns, working on my legato, my alternate picking, all that good stuff. Although I don't regret for a second the time that I put into building up those techniques because I still use them today in a professional sense. But I had missed a lot when it comes to focusing on the mental aspect and not just that, but the ear training part of learning how to solo and improvise. So if the time came and I was going to take a solo, all I was really doing was just playing through scale patterns. And I mean, it's something that I preach against all the time, right? Is like, don't just play a scale up and down. But that's exactly what I was doing for a long time. I was just doing it with flash. And needless to say, I was left pretty unfulfilled with like my musical identity when it came to soloing in that regard. So anyway, just wanted to give a quick backstory on that. And if you can relate, if you find yourself trying to solo, and you're having difficulty, you know, sounding, let's say, musically intelligent, you know, it doesn't have to be about impressing anybody, but just in a way that you feel like, okay, this actually feels authentic to me. I like how this sounds. It's making my ears perk up. I'm actually enjoying listening to myself. And if that's the goal that you're looking to reach, then let me share with you that big breakthrough that I had. So let's set the stage here. Let's take, for example, the A natural minor scale or the A Aeolian scale. Okay, we're going to play it across all 6 strings and it's going to look like this. So starting on the 5th fret of the low E string, we have 5th fret, 7th, 8th. And then same thing on the A string, 5th, 7th, 8th. Then we have 5th and 7th frets on the D string. Then we have 4th, 5th, 7th on the G string. And then we bring it up to the B string for the 5th fret, 6th fret, 8th fret. And then on the high E string, we have 5th fret, 7th fret, 8th fret. So that's the A minor scale, right? Which is essentially just these 7 notes at its core. But this is going to span across multiple octaves since we're using all 6 strings. And of course, we get 3 bonus notes with the high E string. So we're going to establish that as our playground, right? We're going to operate within that scale pattern for the purposes of this lesson. So this scale was a great example of something that I would attempt to use to try and solo, but I was focusing on just like playing through it as quick as I could in a way that was ultimately unmusical and uninspiring. And eventually, as time went on, I started hearing about this concept called playing over chord changes, which at the time was completely foreign to me because I had taken the approach of just having a one-size-fits-all scale and then just playing that to death. But I was curious. I was like, what's this whole thing about playing over chord changes? This was like the beginning stages of me having this breakthrough. First being exposed to that concept. But I had gone through some speed bumps along the way of trying to figure out what that even means. Because in my head, I was just overcomplicating it. I was like, oh man, like I have to like treat each chord now like it's its own key and like figure out how to just like waffle between them like in real time. Just seems like way too much work, and I had spent so much time practicing my technique, just kind of felt irrelevant at that point. But then I started learning that the idea of playing over chord changes is about targeting certain notes within those changing chords. So yeah, in a way, it's kind of like changing keys with every chord, but that almost makes it too complicated. It's more or less just like navigating through whatever position on the fretboard that you're on in a way that allows you to locate chord tones over a given chord progression. So let's take, for example, a chord progression like this: A minor, D minor, F7, and E7. These are the type of chords that you would find in a minor blues kind of progression. Think like The Thrill Is Gone by B.B. King, right? So keeping those chords in mind, that's going to be the example of the chord changes that we're going to look into playing over. And the first thing that I want you to notice is that each of those chords fits right here in the neighborhood of that A minor scale that we just learned. And that's a key detail that's going to really come in handy to make this whole playing over chord changes a whole lot easier. What we're going to do is take each chord and we're going to boil them down to their basic components, right? AKA the chord tones, the individual notes found within each chord. And then we're going to see how we can target them just by staying right here within this neighborhood of that A minor scale. So let's start with our first chord, A minor. So we can consider this our 1 chord since it's a minor blues. So we can call this our 1 minor, right? Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a fragment of that chord to find those basic chord tones. I recommend starting here in the middle position. So we're going to be right here starting on the 7th fret of the D string. That's a root note, that's an A. And then right here, a C, which is the 5th fret on the G string. That's our minor third or flat third. And then right here we have E on the 5th fret of the B string. And that's our 5th, right? So we have our root, third, which is a minor third, and then 5th. Those are essentially the 3 basic components that we need to play or imply an A minor chord. So I can play this, right? That counts as an A minor chord. It doesn't have to be a full A minor chord. Well, if we're playing a full bar chord of A minor like I just did, we're essentially playing this, only we have those same notes occurring again, but in different octaves. And next up we have D minor, our 4 minor chord, we can call it. We're going to find the root note right here, starting on the 7th fret of the G string. And then the 6th fret of the B string is our minor third. And then we have our 5th, which is the 5th fret of the high E string. And we're just starting here for now, just to get the basics of this whole thing. We've got our 1 minor chord, right? Root, third, 5th, and then our 4 minor chord, root, third, 5th. We want to consider these notes targets, right? Within that A minor scale pattern that we just learned. Now for that third chord, the F7 chord, we're going to target these notes right here. Just to keep it super simple. So 7th fret on the D string. That's a third, that's a major third. And then right here, the 8th fret on the G string. That's our flat 7 or a minor 7. And that's partly what makes this a 7th chord, right? Having a major third and a minor 7th in there makes it a dominant, right? Then we have the actual root, which is here on the 6th fret of the B string. So we have 3rd, 7th, root. And then finally for the last chord, the E7 chord, we're going to take the same exact thing that we just learned and bring it down 1 fret. So 6th fret on D, 7th fret on G, 5th fret on B. Because they're literally just, you can call this a sharp 5 and then a 5 as far as the chord number in the progression, right? So it's just those 4 chords. We have the 1 minor chord, A minor, our root, minor third, 5th. We have D minor, root, minor third, 5th. And then for F7, major third, minor 7th, root. Same thing with E7. Major third, minor 7th, root. Oh, and hey, real quick, if you're getting value out of this lesson, please do me a favor and hit that like button. Consider subscribing to our channel if you haven't already. It lets us know that you'd like to see more lessons just like this one, and believe me, we got a whole lot more coming your way. So thanks in advance, and back to the lesson. Now check this out. I'm going to throw in a backing track that uses this very same chord progression, and I'm only going to focus on those chord tones. I'm not going to do anything flashy, not even going to play a scale. I'm just going to focus on those chord tones, but play them in a way that's kind of melodic and deliberate so they actually sound more musical. We're over A minor right now. Just playing the chord tones. Here comes D minor. Back to A minor. Here comes F7, E7, back to A minor, E7 again, and then resolving back to A minor. Okay, so what you have just witnessed was the most basic form of playing over chord changes. I was highlighting those chord tones within all 4 chords in the progression. Now, with a backing track like the one I just used, which is available on our YouTube channel, so you can practice this all day long over that same backing track, obviously knowing and anticipating the changes is important. So I recommend like listening to it, just kind of hearing the chord progression loop through a few times so you can start to anticipate when the changes are occurring. Because like those last couple chords happen a little bit fast. You know, you got that F7 happening, and then that E7 and back to A minor, and then the turnaround with E7 again. So just bear that in mind, okay? Just to help relieve some of the pressure in the beginning. Because it is important with playing over chord changes, you kind of have to be, conscious of what's going on, right? You kind of really have to have this communication highway between, starting with your head, right? Your mind, in your ear especially, and then communicating that to your hands. So it's like, you could think of, mission control is right here, right? Or like the tower, if you're thinking about like with airplanes and stuff, right? It's all got to come from here. There's got to be this top-down kind of thing. Because what I was doing initially, when I was younger and just learning technique, was I did it the opposite way. I was letting my hands essentially dictate everything without being in actual control of what I was doing. That's what I mean by I was doing it wrong, is because I felt like I was just letting the technique speak for itself when, music is so much more than that, obviously. And you can play real slow and simple like I just did and still sound musical. And that's exactly how I recommend you start this out, is just focus on those chord tones. Keep it real simple and just work your way through them. Like I said, memorize that chord progression so you can anticipate those changes. And not only are you just changing keys with every chord, you're actually like flowing through the whole chord progression. So it doesn't feel like a start-stop kind of thing. It's just like this constant flow of musical ideas. And they don't have to be complicated. I could play all day long just by using those chord tones and just doing things like vibrato and bends and slides and all the guitar linguistic stuff to make them sound, more interesting. But if I wanted to actually incorporate more notes, here's how I would work it with that Aeolian scale, right? Or the A minor scale. I would just take fragments of it at first and then weave them in with those chord tones. So let's just take a very basic, like small fragment of the scale. Let's say like right here from 5/7 on the D string and then 4/5/7 on G. Let's say, these additional notes, we'll call them, just a little fragment of the scale, I'm going to work it. And I'm going to do all kinds of stuff. I'm going to do bends, just to add some more melodic content, but I'm still going to strictly focus on those chord tones, targeting them over the chord progression. So let's throw that backing track back on again and see what we can get. So there I dug in a little bit more and decided to get a little bit more bluesy with it, but was focusing still on those chord tones, like where I felt appropriate, but also working in some melodic sort of feeling with that scale. And that's how they're supposed to work together. It's not like a one or the other kind of thing. You're either playing scales or you're playing chord tones. I mean, they all kind of mesh together, right? This is all contained within this same neighborhood as far as like we have this scale pattern and we got those chord tones. They're all just kind of there. So might as well use them all. Now there's different things that'll jump out at us, you know, when it comes to like how it sounds playing just the scale or how it sounds playing just the chord tones, but we want to mix it up into this like tasty cocktail of like great musical soloing that again doesn't have to be flashy or like crazy, right? Just like you get some melodic passes through, but by, you know, using the way that the scale pattern is laid out, and then just focus on those chord tones as like targets. And then you can even create melodies within them as well. And you can almost use the scale as a way to kind of navigate between the chord tones. So those chord tones can be like, you know, point A, B, C, you know, all the way, as many as you have, and then just have the scale be like that kind of route that's in between each of those destinations, right? Each of those points. So that's how you can really weave them together. So what I'll do now is I'll throw the backing track on one last time, and I'm gonna utilize more of the entire scale pattern of the A minor scale, just to kind of show you what it's supposed to look like at the end result. But of course, I want you to start with it small and simple, just with like the basic chord tones, and then as you gradually work your way up, it's gonna look something like this. So hopefully in that last example, I was painting the picture that I was intending, right? Which is just to show you how you can take chord tones. When you focus on targeting the chord tones of the changing chords in a progression, you can weave through them by way of even just a single scale, like what I just did with the A minor scale. And it certainly doesn't stop there. This kind of rule applies to any key, any kind of scale, any kind of tonality, right? If you're dealing with a chord progression, you're dealing with chords that contain chord tones that you can very well target in order to highlight them and ultimately play something that's not only more musical and more fulfilling, but it shows that you're actually paying attention in real time to what you're playing over, which also illustrates that you are in much more control of what you're doing. If you were to ask me to describe in one word the thing that any good guitar player or musician in general has, I would say it's control. And what you're going to do now is build on that sense of control, starting with what we covered here today. So learn and memorize that A minor scale pattern, memorize where those chord tones are contained within, and use those over that backing track to actually put them to work. But like I said, it doesn't stop there. In fact, there's a whole lot more that you can explore when you venture into other musical keys. And speaking of which, if you want to be able to learn how to find any key on your fretboard in record time, I got the very thing that's going to get you there, and it's free. Aha! This right here is that free gift for you and your guitar. It's a free guide on how to instantly solo in any key. After this lesson, you're going to be able to venture into any key and use the concepts that we covered here today. It's pretty exciting stuff, so be sure to click here to claim your free copy or check the link in the description box. I believe if you marry the concepts of knowing what scales to play in any given key and knowing how to target the chord tones in a chord progression, that's really where the magic happens.